On August 29th, 2012, one of the world's biggest sporting events gets underway. Over 4,000 athletes will descend on London to compete across 20 different sports. The Paralympic Games, with their origins here in the UK, are coming home. This film profiles some of Great Britain's most elite athletes, and then, using state-of-the-art technology, looks inside their bodies to discover the secrets behind their extraordinary abilities. How does this footballer hit the back of the net over and over again when he's completely blind? How do these wheelchair rugby players achieve almost superhuman fitness when they are paralyzed from the chest down? And what's enabled an equestrian with virtually no strength and movement in his limbs to master the control of a 1-ton horse? And to celebrate these amazing athletes, this program premieres 5 unique films featuring these Paralympic Games hopefuls, shot against the backdrop of the next city to host the Games, London. It's 2 years since the Beijing Paralympic Games, where Britain had major success, coming second in the medal table. Liz Johnson, aged 24, is now training hard for London 2012.
Do I look 24? No. Good.
Liz's extraordinary story made headlines twice during Beijing. Tragically, her mother died the day Liz arrived at the Games. Then, a week later, she won a gold medal.
I should never have won that race, you know, because my mind was so numb. I think what got me through was the preparation I'd done in the 3.5 years preceding it, and my mum too, you know, because like she'd helped me deal with the fact she was ill. Like obviously I didn't know that she was going to die while I was in Beijing, and she never ever let on that she thought she would. Initially, I didn't know what to do. Then I just thought, well, actually I can go home now, but she's not coming back. But I will have missed, I'll miss the opportunity to try and go and make her proud, I guess. She's sacrificed so much to give me the opportunity to go and achieve my dream. In a weird way, like my mum got the recognition that she deserved.
Liz Johnson was born with cerebral palsy.
Cerebral palsy just means brain damage, basically. My cerebral palsy affects the whole of my right side.
She's been swimming for 20 years, and like all successful athletes, her career has taken extraordinary commitment.
Athens fell in the same year as my A-levels, so I was going to school in Newport in South Wales, but I was having to swim in Swansea, so basically I'd get up at 4:30, so I'd get to Swansea for 5:45, and then I'd swim from 6 till 8, and then I'd drive back to Newport, and then I'd be in school from 9 till 3:30, and then I'd drive back down to Swansea, and then I'd swim till 7:30, and then I'd drive back home to Newport. It's a 108-mile round trip. At that point, I was fortunate that I was disabled, because it meant that I could learn to drive when I was 16. So every cloud has a silver lining. Boom.
Liz has restricted movement on land, which somehow she seems able to overcome in water. Even her trainer is not sure how.
When she first came and said, I want to come to Bath, I sat down and had so many questions for her that it ended up being, she goes, well, I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this. And I'm like, right, well, why can't you do that? And it became very much a puzzle.
To the naked eye, in the water, I probably don't look that disabled. But if you compare me to an Olympic breaststroker, then it is clear that my impairment is quite large in the water. As a youngster, I didn't consider myself to be disabled.
Do you now?
I'm disabled, yes, I guess. Well, I am. Like, there's no getting away from it. There are things that I can't do that other people can do. Bam. But it doesn't mean that I can't actually achieve the same outcome as them. I'll just go about it in a different way.
While many athletes are competing to qualify for their first Paralympic Games at London 2012, one is aiming for his fourth. Lee Pearson, CBE, MBE, OBE, who has amassed 9 gold medals in the 3 previous Paralympic Games for equestrian dressage.
Right then, this is Gentleman, who's been very happy as normal. He's a bit insecure, Gentleman. Gentleman is my most advanced horse at the moment. He went to the Beijing Paralympic Games, and he's just going to be prepared by Paulina now. I'm going to ride him first. This is Zion. He's very babyish and wants to chew everything, including people. Are you ready for me? Stand still, Wild Thing. Turn around.
My disability is called arthrogryphosis multiplex congenita. Genetically, the muscle tissue didn't grow correctly when I was inside my mum and growing. So when I was born, the right foot was wrapped around the left knee, the left foot was wrapped around the right knee, my arms were deadly straight and twisted.
This is my natural height. That's not meant to be small.
Everybody says that my sport doesn't seem like the most athletic of sports, but I say to them, I'll give you a riding lesson and we'll see who survives the longest and how fit you have to be.
It's a phenomenal feeling with all this power from this size horse, working with you and listening to you when you put the accelerator on and listening to you when you put the brakes on. But then on a bad day, this horses can make you feel like you can't ride one end of a pogo stick.
You just pray when it's important that he's going to behave.
Lee's condition left him with severely reduced muscle tissue in his 4 limbs and joints that had fused.
For months after being born, I was tied to a crucifix to get the joints to go in the correct position. I went through 15 major operations, and I can't remember those operations and things I went through, but yeah, my mum said I understandably used to scream a lot.
As Lee grew up and learnt to cope with his impairment, fate dealt him another card. At 15, It dawned on Lee that he was gay.
Your sexuality is something that happens in your teens. That was more difficult than coping with my disability, because I'd had to cope with that from day one, and even though I knew I was disabled, that was normal for me.
We actually met online when Lee got back from Beijing. Just getting ready for London and how I'm going to react to that, because that's going to be quite a big deal for me as well.
You know, we're not married yet. You can change your mind. I get told off for not getting jealous.
Oh, you do get jealous, though. I got a free car wash the other day and you got jealous over that.
Do you know, these car washes, all these Croatians, he arrives here and he went, I've got the car washed. I went, yeah, good, free. How? He went, because they washed it and hoovered it and cleaned it, and he got to the end and one of the car wash blokes just went, my friend wants over there wants to know if you're gay. And I went, yeah. He went, oh, well, the car wash is on him. What did you have to do in return for a free car wash? That's disgusting.
So thank you very much, and got the car very well.
Gay Croatians? I mean, when did that happen?
Lee has mastered his discipline despite considerable impairments. For Liz, the secret of how she has conquered her impairment in the water lies deep inside her body. Liz Johnson spends 20 hours a week in the water training for a relentless cycle of competitions. But having cerebral palsy means some strokes are easier for her to swim than others.
She's obviously very good at breaststroke. Her other strokes, she would say, are rubbish. The non-symmetrical freestyle and backstroke are just hard because she's got to keep moving, and obviously her weak side is not as controlled, not as strong.
How is Liz able to swim breaststroke, a symmetrical stroke to gold medal winning standard, but unable to master to the same degree non-symmetrical strokes? In humans, the left side of the body is controlled by the right brain, and vice versa. Liz has brain damage in her left brain, impairing her movements on the right-hand side of her body. Liz is going to have her brain damage and motor abilities assessed with Dr. Simon Farmer, a consultant neurologist who specializes in cerebral palsy.
I can feel my brain trying to get, say, my hand to work, and I can feel my hand wanting to work, but there's like a gap from like here to here.
Just try picking up the pen with your right hand for me.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. And it's clearly a lot of effort, isn't it? You're going red in the
Yeah, I have to hold my breath, you
You
know?
do, yeah.
So yeah, so what would like, is there a reason?
Okay, just to pick up with your good hand now. Just, yep, good, fantastic. One of the ideas that we may explore with you is whether the side of the brain that suffered most of the injury, which is on the left side, which controls the right side of your body, whether the actions of that part of the brain are actually being compensated for by the right side of the brain, which is the undamaged side, or the less affected side.
Yeah.
An MRI scan, Liz's first since childhood, will identify the exact position and severity of her brain damage.
This is interesting to see here in this white line damage in the nerve fibre bundles which originate in her motor cortex. This is the part of the brain that is controlling our voluntary movements. These should be controlling the right-hand side of their body, but they're unable to, which is why she has cerebral palsy. So there's quite significant brain damage here, literally cutting through those pathways that should be there. As you go further down in the brain, the situation gets even more interesting. What you see on her damaged left side here is a shrunken area of brain where the nerve bundles are damaged, and there are many fewer of them than we would normally see.
Dr. Farmer also notices something that may help explain Liz's exceptional swimming ability.
What's really interesting and exciting is that on the undamaged side of her brain, there seems to have been a compensatory increase in the size of the nerve bundles, more nerve bundles than we would expect to see normally. And this might be a clue as to what's going on in Liz's particular case. If you just use your good hand to make this movement, yeah. And do you see how you can move pretty much the fingers independently of one another? You can actually tap each finger in turn. But what's happening to that arm as you're trying to do that?
It's contracting,
It's
but
contracting,
it was like
yes.
there was no effort in the contraction.
No, I mean, you're not trying to do that, are you?
No, I'm looking at this.
Yeah, you're trying to do this one. Now, what I want you to do is to try and activate your bad hand, okay? So try and tap each finger in turn. What we see is there's movements here, okay? And you see the thumb and the fingers are coming together. Now, is you conscious that that's happening?
No.
We think the reason for that is because it's not your left brain that's trying to do this, but it's actually your right brain, the brain that is not affected by the problem that you had.
Could Liz's right brain be capable of sending the same instructions to both sides of her body?
We're connecting electrodes to my muscles.
Dr. Farmer hopes to find out using this test.
Stimulating the right side of my brain, which is
Magnetic impulses applied to one side of his brain only trigger movement in one hand.
come down.
But in Liz, they trigger both hands. Liz's most successful swimming strokes are symmetrical, like breaststroke. When the movements are mirrored, one side of her brain is able to control both sides of her body. Paralympic sports have been born out of a wide range of human impairments. Few injuries are more serious than a broken neck. But it seems no one told these guys.
1, 2, 3, kick!
Wheelchair rugby was originally from Canada. It was put together by people that weren't strong enough or able enough to play wheelchair basketball. The sport is quite dangerous. Playing in Germany, was passing the ball and got hit by 2 players at the same time, and my chair flipped right up and I come down and landed on one of the other players' knees. I didn't realise at the time, but when I got back to England I went to hospital and I'd broken my sternum and 7 ribs. I'd bruised my heart. I was in intensive care for 3 days and then in hospital for about 3 months. Sometimes it's important to give somebody a good wallop. Either stop them in their track or stop them getting from A to B, basically. You'll see by the damage of the chairs and the punches you get that they happen, and so they should, you know, it's part of the game, I love it. So you do get injuries, but so does every sport, you know. Footballers get broken legs, nothing in life's perfectly safe. Trust us, we've all broken our necks. It was my girlfriend's birthday. The day wasn't much different from this. It was a really nice day, so we sat on the balcony. And then I fell off the balcony. It's as simple as that. It's hard to explain. There wasn't much really that went wrong or what happened. I wasn't being stupid. There was nothing wrong with the balcony. It was just a freak accident. I only fell 1 floor. I wasn't very high. I was only on the 1st floor, so you know, I was very unlucky really for what happened. I landed on my bum. I was looking up when I landed and my head went back over my shoulders and it snapped my neck. It wasn't the day that I planned. At the time I had no movement in my arms either. Just the shock just completely knocked everything out. And so I couldn't move anything at all, and I can remember asking the doctor, am I going to die? And I was laying on my back, and at the time he said, Stephen, I can't tell you that. I can't say either way. And I can remember 1 tear just rolling down the side of my face and not being able to wipe the tear off my face. From here up, I've got normal sensation and, you know, normal movement. I can feel heat, hot, cold, pain, the usuals. But from the same level downwards, I've got nothing apart from touch. I've got no idea if it's painful, sharp, blunt. You know, I just know something's there.
Steve's injury brought him to Stoke Mandeville Hospital, the spiritual home of the Paralympic Games. Here he encountered both the sport that would change his life and the national wheelchair rugby squad, including teammate Mandip Semi, who broke his neck in a car accident at the age of 19.
You first turn up to the hospital, it's overwhelming, completely overwhelming. You don't know what's going on, you're confused, your whole life's changed. All your goals and dreams of what you thought you were going to do, you know, you can't even do them anymore, you know, and...
Do you remember Jimmy Savile fucking going about?
Jimmy Savile all over the place.
The guy is nuts, man, proper nuts. Yeah. He'd come round like from ward to ward just like, oh, with his cigar and shit, and like, he'd put on his gold bracelet and he'd be like, fucking, he'd be nuts, man. He'd come in, tell you a joke and just fuck off again. Like, all right, Jim.
Yeah.
Wheelchair rugby is one of over a dozen sports used for rehabilitation at Stoke Mandeville.
Compared to every other activity we had in hospital, it was by far the best. You kind of forgot you were in a chair for a little bit.
It was a proper eye-opener. You know, I'd gone from the hospital where everything's on a flat surface and everybody's doing everything for you because it's such a struggle and everything's hard work. And I came down here and I was watching people smashing the shit out of each other in wheelchairs. They was angry, they was aggressive, they were violent, they were screaming, they were shouting. Human traits that I hadn't even seen for 2 months, let alone seen anyone in a wheelchair ever have.
Having made the squad in just 3 years, Steve is now fighting for team selection at London 2012.
Just because it's a Paralympic sport, it doesn't mean that it's given to any of the players on a plate. I train every day to be in the squad. I train every day thinking about the Australians training every day. If I miss a day's training, they're one up on me.
These Paralympic hopefuls are desperate to reach London 2012. But to do so, will they be able to break through to unprecedented levels of fitness? Dressage is the art and sport of horse training. In what's sometimes called horse ballet, a dressage rider spends years training each horse to respond effortlessly and accurately to their instructions.
It just looks like this powerful horse is like doing ballet in the arena, and the judge is then just judging these movements, that they're powerful, but they're relaxed and they're in a rhythm. Because of my disability, I have limited movement and strength. Ooh. But what has built up is a phenomenal amount of suppleness in my pelvis and my bum and my lower back to absorb the movement. I can't be a lazy rider, I can't be a messy rider because of the restrictions of my disability. Trot. What I'm trying to do now is just keep him in the exact same rhythm in trot. And to do that, I'm just trying to keep my pelvis in the rhythm that I want. And I do little half halts, which is little reminders down the rein that he should stay with me if he speeds up too much. And if he slows down, do little reminders with my heels in the rhythm. All my body can stiffen up if I just want him to collect a little bit. Push, 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 and collect. Block, block, block. Half halt, because he's running, and I'll change the direction. Now, good boy. Ask him to canter by sliding my outside leg back. And with this, my pelvis and my seat is more of a swinging action. I swing in the saddle that my bum doesn't leave the saddle. Because his back in this movement is like whooshing like a wave. And just to prove that I'm not using the reins to hold himself on, it's just my balance and my seat. I'll ride him with no reins whatsoever. So it's just my bum keeping me in the saddle.
What's the secret of Lee's incredible level of control over his horses?
Super. Gold medal.
Lee's dressage skills are so advanced that he competes in both disabled and able-bodied competitions.
What a lot of people would say is, like, how can a disabled person compete against an able-bodied rider, and what do they do differently? The answer to that question is they absolutely do nothing differently. It's up to us disabled riders to use our talent that we've been born with to train the horses to accept our disabilities. We have riders in Germany that have no legs.
As an able-bodied rider, I couldn't hope to achieve some of the things that Lee achieves. His balance is just phenomenal. The way he controls the horses and makes them go through his weight and shifting his body weight is just absolutely amazing. There are not many able-bodied people who would be able to make a horse move the way Lee makes a horse move.
Able-bodied riders control their horses mainly with their legs. Thanks to his condition, Lee has extremely limited function in his limbs.
In my case, my legs are encased in plastic from my hips to my heels, so I've got no knee movement and I've got no ankle movement there. They are set in that bent position.
Inside Lee's limbs there is very little muscle tissue. Scar and fibrous tissue developed instead. His shoulders have half the strength and movement that they should have. His arms are severely affected, with only 3% of normal strength in his biceps. Similarly, several muscles in his legs are impaired, including his thighs and calves, which, like his biceps, also have a minuscule amount of the strength that they should. 15 operations unlocked fused joints, straightened his arms and wrists, and built ankle joints which Lee didn't have. The secret of his phenomenal riding skill lies in the pressure and control he can exert simply using the force of his hips.
Thank you. We may not win, but at the end of the day, I've come here and I've won and I've not been pleased with him. Today, I'm over the moon. He was just the best that he can be here, so really pleased. I knew I should have been a gymnast. So athletic. So, we won the second test. So I was very pleased with that. I was pleased with the horse anyway. On a good day, I feel like I'm dancing.
As London 2012 looms, the impact of extensive training on the national wheelchair rugby squad is continuously scientifically tracked.
How's your get, Manny? Go on, then. Go on, that's better.
Is what hobby? Wheelchair rugby a hobby? No way. Wheelchair rugby is a complete lifestyle. To call it anything less is an insult. I wake up, the first thing that's on my mind is, am I late for training? The second thing that's on my mind is, what's my training day today? What should I be eating? The third thing on my mind is the training itself. And the fourth thing on my mind is making sure that I go to bed in time to get up for training again the next day.
Go on, right, push, 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 push.
Loughborough University is world-renowned in sports science.
When you get that call or that email saying we've got to be back there again, it's just like in the back of your mind. You dread it, like, because it's just a day of just balls out, hard work, and there's no way around it.
How tall are you?
I don't really know, you know, I'm guessing 6 foot 6, 7, I don't know, something like that. I guess I haven't been measured properly since, well, I have, but I don't really believe them.
And 3, 2, 1, and go. Come on, mate.
My height's different because it's a lot in my limbs. That's when it benefits me in my game. I've got such long arms, I can sort of get so much of the wheel and get so many less strokes than everyone else and so much more speed. So technically I'm going faster but using less energy. So I'm quite efficient, I guess.
You run over your own fingers?
I have done in the past.
Keep driving, well done, mate. Superb.
Manny is an extraordinary character. He's got extremely long arms. He can use that to his advantage in his pushing technique. Whereas Steve has got other qualities, determination, motivation, that really push him through producing a very, very good VO2 peak test on the treadmill.
The VO2 peak, the maximum volume of oxygen consumed during exercise, is measured on a tortuous, specially designed wheelchair treadmill. In repeated 5-minute sessions, the athletes endure increasing speeds and inclines.
And I think it's looking good, as long as you're comfortable with this, to go for the 5th stage, okay?
Yeah. Keep it going, Brownie.
Manny and Steve have use of their arms because of the position that their injuries occurred to their spine, within the highest 7 vertebrae, known as C1 to C7, that support the neck.
When I fell off the balcony, it dislocated my 6th vertebrae and it slipped down and in front of my 7th vertebrae and basically crushed my spinal cord flat. The spinal cord sends all the signals down to everything below there to move or to feel heat. So if I'd broken 1 vertebrae higher, my fingers wouldn't work at all. 1 vertebrae higher than that, I wouldn't have any finger or wrist movement. 1 higher than that, I wouldn't be able to lift my arms up. And, you know, and so on and so on.
Keep pushing, Ronnie, keep pushing.
Manny and Steve have both reached extraordinary levels of fitness by developing the function they still have.
Keep driving, that's good. Keep working, Steve, keep driving. That's it, big part of pushing. Keep driving through. Yeah.
You've been told that you're paralysed. You try and find out what's actually gone wrong. And for me, it's like from the nipples above, you know, is where my function starts. So when I breathe, it's not using any of my so-called rib muscles, you know, that I use to breathe. So my breathing is heavily impaired compared to somebody who's not paralysed, obviously.
It's not just impaired breathing that should limit these athletes' capabilities. As the chest cannot expand as much as it should do, the lungs do not fill completely. This greatly reduces the surface area inside the lungs and the amount of oxygen absorbed into the blood. Despite the work rate of the arms, because the majority of the body is paralyzed, the heart does not recognize that the body is exercising strenuously, and the heart rate increases only slightly. This is partly because the adrenal glands are found on the kidneys, but because the nerves that would activate the glands don't work, no adrenaline is produced. In an able-bodied human, blood is pumped by the heart and also by the muscles in the limbs, which contract around the veins. This blood pump doesn't happen when the muscles are paralyzed. It was thought that these deficiencies would mean quadriplegic athletes could never achieve high VO2 peak levels. But research like this is showing that that's not the case. These athletes' intense training programs have seen them break through the predicted limits.
Both characters have got exceptional values when compared to normative values of untrained wheelchair individuals.
Really work for me, come on.
Get it back, get it back, get it back, get it back, come on. Push.
Come on, let's keep driving. 10 more seconds, okay, relax. Brilliant.
That's excellent.
20 seconds, all right?
1 and 3.
After 30 minutes, Steve is exhausted.
Well done, Ronnie.
It shouldn't have taken me the loss of 2/3 of my body to make the most of the last third, but it did.
From one great British sport to another, in Paralympic football, the players are blind, shooting at a goal that they cannot see. Dave Clark is captain of England's football team, the blind football team.
I've been blind since birth. I have congenital glaucoma. My sight loss, I think it was caused by something during my mother's pregnancy. But I don't know, and to be honest with you, I don't really care. There's quite a lot of stereotypes and automatic assumptions that go with blindness alone, never mind mixing blind and football. It's only when people see it that you really get them enthusing about it, actually.
Blind football players have varying degrees of visual impairment, so they're all blindfolded to even things out. This is a game that relies entirely on their sense of hearing and spatial awareness.
Well, first of all, is the ball makes a rattle sound when it moves.
You've got a sighted goalkeeper. It's played on a five-a-side pitch. You've got defender. Usually 2 midfielders and an up-fronter. You've got a coach on the sideline and a coach behind the goal.
You 1-on-1. You passed him. Shoot!
players have got a good awareness where the goal is, but the guide's there to sort of let them have an idea where the keeper's standing. We have the boards down the side to keep the ball in, but also it helps with the players' orientation so that they're able to gauge some sound and echo location from the boards. But the biggest thing is how they receive the ball, how they run with the ball. First of all, keep the ball very, very close to the feet. When they shoot, they do a short, sharp backlift jab. The biggest thing is really working on their orientation skills and mobility. So they're the biggest things that are different from, you know, working with sighted people.
Face the goal, face the goal. Go on, control it. No one said shoot. No finish. That's better. Great save.
While Dave is one of the players who've been blind since birth, others lost their sight more recently.
Concentrate on my voice. Yes, Craig. Yeah, there it is.
Been blind 3 years. I was blinded in Iraq while operations out there with the 2nd Battalion of the Duke of Lancasters when I was hit by 2 rocket-propelled grenades fighting on a rooftop with my section, which blinded me. I also broke my jaw, lost 3 teeth, got a plate in my cheek. These are prosthetic eyes. All my scars have been sewn back on, all my eyelids have been sewn back on, and I've got a plate in my arm as well. So, pretty lucky really. Some of my team come home in a box. I'm very privileged to represent my country again.
After just 3 years without sight, Craig is rising through the ranks of the national squad. But what's the key to his captain, Dave Clarke's success? Dave has 110 caps and has scored 106 goals.
I think the advantage is that you have been born blind in the football environment is that your spatial awareness seems to be generally better. Ned, come and lie down on your bed, come.
When Dave isn't wearing an England top, he wears a shirt and tie. Dave works as a bank executive. After 15 years at an office in the city, he's very recently relocated and is still familiarizing himself with the new surroundings.
Pretty reliant on people not leaving stuff out.
After a lifetime of blindness, Dave's spatial awareness is extremely accurate. It isn't just on the football pitch that it comes into its own.
The vision that I have in my head, I don't know where it comes from. It has to be through the brain taking all the senses other than sight and putting that all together to produce a picture, I guess. The nice thing about this space is that it's very tight, it's very, you know, you can really get a sense of, I could walk straight down the middle of this because I can really tell where the walls are, even though they're made of glass, which is not ideal because it doesn't give the same kind of noise as this stuff would. But I'm also hearing a gap here because there's nothing, you know, there's sound coming from behind it. Whereas if I stand here, the sound is dead because it's a wall. But if I stand in this gap here, so that's why I can reasonably easily, you know, kind of walk like that through a door because the sound of the space, if you like. I've tried generally to work with what's around me, but occasionally I will just give a little, it gives me a fix on where I am. We're in.
Dave's new work colleagues are getting used to how he sees his world. But he's decided the time is right to give them a glimpse of his other life.
David spoke to his old office, London City, and they've kindly agreed to come down and give us a five-a-side football match. Come 5 o'clock, we're going to put our kit on and hopefully beat the other office.
I think they're very, very interested to see how it works for me, but I know what will happen. There'll be that level of interest at the first 2 or 3 minutes, and then they'll be playing football.
One of Team GB's most recent athletics recruits, Stephanie Reid, is in the final stages of preparation for the 2010 Paralympic World Cup in Manchester.
I compete in the 100 meters, I do the 200 meters, and I do the long jump. My mum is from Newcastle and my dad is from Glasgow. Yeah, but actually typically a lot of, especially boys, they wouldn't come around because they were terrified of my dad and his accent. Boys would never call because he was on the answering machine. And as soon as I heard his voice, they would just hang up. I was born in New Zealand. Obviously I had British citizenship through my parents, and I have Canadian citizenship simply just through naturalization. I lost one leg when I was 16 and started using one of these when I was about 19. You know, it was a wonderful day. I just spent the weekend at my best friend's cottage with another friend, and we were going tubing, which is where you have an inner tube that's attached to a motorboat, and they just kind of drag you behind it. And you know, obviously the point is to go so fast and do a fast corner that, you know, it knocks you off the tube. Usually they'll have a spotter and a driver, and so the spotter alerts the driver to let them know if someone's off the tube, but there was just a miscommunication, and the driver actually, he just didn't know that I was in the water, and so he kept on going, which was fine, and I was just in the water waiting to get picked up again. And you know, I saw the boat coming, and so I thought maybe if I dove down underneath the boat to miss the propellers, then I would be okay. But the problem was I had a life vest on. I got caught in the propellers both across my lower back and my glutes, and also I had a cut along the middle of my foot, and the biggest reasons the foot was amputated in the end was the surgeon knew that I was quite athletic, and he knew that I would get far more activity out of an artificial leg as opposed to the foot that if he had just sewn it up as best as he could, it probably would have only been about 60% functional.
Stephanie's carbon fibre running blade costs the same as a small car and lasts only 2 years. But running with other prosthetics proved impossible.
The bones now that I was running on, they just aren't designed to carry, you know, that much pressure. Your foot is specially designed to kind of even out the distribution of the weight, but you know, shin bones just don't do that.
She's been running with the blade for 6 years now, and there's a lot more to how it works than meets the eye. Researchers examine her running technique in detail using a state-of-the-art motion capture system.
The motion capture system really allows us to track movement. We can look at things like speed and acceleration, how quickly the joints are opening and closing, predict some of those forces at the joints, and really then looking at trying to optimize technical performance.
3, 2, 1, go.
What we've got here are two graphs. This is your trainer leg, and then this is your blade leg.
It looks like the amount of time that is spent on the ground is slightly different. Is that true? Or?
Yeah.
As Steph begins to run, the blade is passive and produces no energy, unlike her uninjured foot, where the muscles and tendons are active, producing energy to propel her motion. But this changes as her momentum builds and she approaches maximum speed. Then the running blade works more actively. It begins to act like a diving board, absorbing the energy of each impact and releasing it as she pushes off. Crucially, the blade has no heel, unlike the foot, where the impact of the heel decelerates her, losing 40% of her foot's energy. At maximum speed, the blade produces much more energy return than her foot. The two legs operate differently, are very different in weight, and her foot produces less energy than the blade returns. With such a marked difference, how on earth does an athlete like Steph control these two very different legs at the same time? Steph's running style is so perfectly symmetrical, it's nearly impossible to detect any variation between the movement of the two legs. Would it be easier to see in a runner new to blades? 17-year-old Johnny Peacock is also making his debut GB appearance at the World Cup. He's been running on a blade for only 7 months, and his technique is still developing.
Since I got the leg, my technique has changed definitely hugely in the last 7 months. It was a little bit hard to control at first. Like my leg used to swing out when I was running and stuff, and it made it harder, but it's all technique things, but it was definitely a lot different and a lot better.
3, 2, 1, go.
Johnny lost his leg at the age of 5 to meningitis.
Excellent. Good man, you hit it spot on.
I remember one thing driving through some red traffic lights. I was in the back seat of the car with my Power Rangers duvet around me. Good old Power Rangers.
Yeah, explain to a 5-year-old that they're about to lose their leg. That's a very awful conversation to have, and it's also an incredibly difficult conversation to convey what that's going to mean. But once he got over that, one of the first things he wanted to know was, can he run on sports day still? That was all he wanted to know. And when he ran that race on Sports Day, and you know, on your marks, get set, go, and there's all these little boys running as fast as they can, and Johnny's not at the front and he's not at the back, he's in that middle pack.
Okay, Johnny.
What's that mean?
So that's you. That's you in three-dimensional space.
Detailed analysis of young Johnny's asymmetrical running style reveals exactly how these athletes' bodies cope with two such drastically different legs.
So we can look at sort of the asymmetry in your running gait. Certainly the hip of the prosthetic limb, which is here, would probably be doing more work than the sort of trainer side or your intact limb. So what you're actually seeing is you're actually adapting the amount of sort of forces that your muscles are producing to compensate for the actual missing limb.
The real magic for these athletes takes place higher up the body. The secret is in the hips. The hip muscles on each side adapt to apply different forces for the two very different legs. The hip muscles must also deal with unequal energy returns. As Johnny's control of his running style continues to finesse, his times can improve. If he does well in his next race, he'll be one step closer to London 2012.
Practice. Just keep practicing, and eventually you start to control it a little bit more, you start to get used to it.
The next stage in Johnny's quest for selection for London 2012 will be the Paralympic World Cup. But how would he fare when he's running against the fastest Paralympian on Earth? In Hertfordshire, the captain of the England blind football team, Dave Clark, and his sighted co-workers are lining up for a five-a-side against his old office.
If I run into the fence, don't worry about it. It will just happen. What was important to me was just to know the dimensions of the pitch and then to get on with it.
I did start off the game a bit wary of how it was going to be with him, but then as soon as it kicked off and everyone got going, within a couple of minutes, it was just normal, really.
He was absolutely fantastic. I mean, the silky skills he's got with ball at his feet. He's aware of players around him. Oh, just very impressed, very impressed.
Right back, David, right back, David! Step on, Chris. Oh, great goal.
Speed is really useful because it means I get to play at a higher intensity than perhaps when I'm doing training against other blind people. So when the ball actually does come to me, I've got to move quickly and do things fast, which is great. To play against sighted people is stepping up a level. As long as we're playing with my ball, that's pretty much the only concession I need to be able to play in that environment.
Blind since birth, what is enabling Dave to understand what's happening around him without the sense of sight?
I have a picture in my mind all the time of the players, of the ball, of the opposition, of the goal, of the sideboards, the coaches, the crowd. That picture is there in relation to where I am on the pitch. And I don't think I could play football without that.
Could the secret of this lie in his brain and his hearing ability? Dave has joined Rodri Cusack, a neuroscientist at Cambridge University, to examine how his brain processes what he hears.
So we're going to take Dave and put him in the MRI scanner. We're going to play some sounds to him over those headphones and give him a simple task to do. So, for example, listen for changes in the position of the sounds or in the pitch of the sounds. We're then going to use the MRI scanner to look at which regions of the brain are involved while he's doing that task.
This audio task should produce activity only in the part of the brain that processes sound.
This is the first time we've scanned a blind participant on an auditory task in this way.
Okay, Dave, if you press the left button if they're different, the right button if they're the same.
Okay, fine.
Initially, Dave's brain responds to the sounds exactly as it should, and as it would in a sighted person. Only the parts of the brain used for hearing light up.
So this is the auditory. It's a bit more superior, just on the top of the temporal lobe.
But then, something surprising begins to happen. The part of the brain that deals with vision begins to respond to the sounds too.
This looks like the activity we'd get if we were presenting some pictures to a sighted volunteer.
You didn't expect that?
No, certainly not so strongly. It's amazingly robust. Scientists often assume that the sensory regions are hardwired, and what we're seeing here is what neuroscientists call plasticity. So the visual regions at the back of the brain that's starting to process sounds in the absence of visual input.
An increased capacity to process sounds could explain Dave's incredible spatial awareness and his ability to see what he hears.
For me, it's an interesting question to try to understand exactly what those regions are doing. How can they be processing these sounds?
So the pattern of activity we saw today, I've never seen that kind of activity before while we're presenting sounds.
Intuitively, you would think that part of the brain would just die through lack of use, or just not be functional. An incredible amount of information comes through the brain, and incredibly little is known about it. On the basis that I can't see, and yet I have a perfect visual image in my head about how the world is and how I operate in it, there must be some form of adaptation.
Hello, Dave.
London 2012 is still 2 years away, and team selections have yet to be made. The Paralympic World Cup offers a chance to impress the selectors, especially for Johnny, who's making his debut appearance for Team GB.
I'm so thrilled to be running for my country, but if I keep saying to myself, this is such an amazing, by the end of it, when I come to the race, I'm going to be like, oh my God, I'm actually doing it, it's huge, it's absolutely massive. So if you just sort of dial it down, you're a bit less nervous, it just sort of helps me. I mean, I know this is a huge experience, and being able to wear the kit that I wear is just amazing, so it's just great. I don't like to be beaten. If I go into a race where I could possibly beat people, I'm not going to be happy if I lost.
But debutant Johnny is in for a challenge. Also racing in the men's 100 meters is the fastest Paralympian on earth, Oscar Pistorius.
Someone goes to me, oh yeah, you're going to be in the lane next to Oscar. I never actually believed it until I actually saw on the sheet that I was next to him. Walking out onto the tracks and you hear the crowd roar, and it just sort of sent chills up my spine, like all goosebumps. I started to get really nervous. I was like, oh God. And that's like sort of like, that's when your heart just starts going, like sort of pounding at you, and the adrenaline starts coming for you.
Johnny Peacock shoulder to shoulder there with Pistorius, and Peacock a little bit slow out of his blocks, but his pickup is good. And here comes Ian Jones, second from the right hand side, but look at Pistorius' motor. Oh wow, Pistorius wins it easily. Oscar Pistorius, absolutely magnificent.
Beating his previous personal best of 12.37 would keep Johnny in the running for the Paralympic Games. And he has.
12.23, I think.
But he knows he can do better.
I wanted to get 12.2 because that's a B standard for the World Champs in New Zealand. I've got a couple more months to do it now, so I shouldn't really be too nervous. I've run the time, just to run a little bit faster. It's not much.
While Johnny has taken one more step towards realizing his 2012 dream,
Wow. What place did you come?
Fifth.
That's really good. You had a full heat too.
it's now Stephanie Reed's turn to take to the blocks for her first competition in a GB shirt.
Very good. Congrats.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you.
Her first race and a bronze medal. Her first for GB. Will there be more to come? With 2 years to go, what lies ahead for Steph and the other athletes as they strive to make the selection for London 2012?
This is the disabled, lazy way of walking your dogs. Some people might be a bit shocked, but they love it. They get on and off as they want to. We've got a puppy underneath at the moment, which is not so good. Vogue, come out there. Come on out.
11 days, 20 sports, 4,000 athletes. 2 years to go. These men and women and hundreds of Britons like them have nothing else on their mind. With training comes fitness, with effort comes accomplishment, and with determination comes success. What's inside these incredible athletes is an unrivaled drive, unending commitment, and a will to be centre stage at arguably the most important sporting event in the UK for generations.
It's 12 at 12 for me. I'll be after my 12th gold medal at London 2012. I have got to try and win in London 2012.
I perform best when I'm not afraid to fail. And that's hard, especially when you're going into home Olympics, because there is a lot at stake of you, if you fail. And so that's something that I'm definitely working on.
In the last 2 years, I've made a lot of changes to my training regime and to my lifestyle. And so I've done a great deal of the groundwork to prepare myself for London. So in terms of the next 2 years and where they're going to take me, I think it's all about building on the foundations that I've set myself.
I think I'd ever be happy if I didn't get into London. It's going to be hard times, because at the moment I've made a personal best at every race I've done. But I know that there's going to come a time very soon, because that obviously was great. Getting a personal best at every race is just fantastic. It's going to take a lot longer to get these tiny little chunks off, because I've taken over a second in the last year. I'm not going to take a second off in the next year, and I know that.
People watch the Olympics because they want to see achievement, inspiration. If you want that, watch the Paralympics just for an hour. Watch the opening ceremony, watch what has been achieved and what personal mountains people have climbed just to get in the door of that stadium.
You look at reality, you can't change things. It's just how you deal with them. You come out of hospital, you have two options. You can do fuck all, or you can do everything you want. And it's the way you choose to go, like, you know what I mean? What would you do, like, you know what I mean? It's just, why would you miss like opportunities like this? It's just, for me, sport at the moment is everything, and it's just, I don't know, I love it.
Every time you're dropped, all it does is make you want to make sure that you're not dropped again. And I know that I'm not the only one saying that. You know, everyone's jostling for positions in the squad, and everybody wants to be part of it. And you know, hopefully, London 2012 is my time, and it is my turn. And God knows I've done everything I can to make that possible.
Personally, I'm hopefully going to get the opportunity to captain my country in the Paralympics in what will be undoubtedly my last tournament in the sport after 15 years. Collectively, as a team, we have the ability to go and change the blind football world, really, by putting Great Britain top of the tree. The prize is there, and my God, is it worth it.